By now, you've heard about Global Poker, one of the fastest growing online card rooms available in the US and Canada today. So what's stopping you from trying it out? Global Poker is a safe and secure social poker site that uses their own patented sweepstakes model. Signing up is easy. You can use Google, Facebook, or just an email address. You can always play for free on Global Poker, but you can also buy gold coins for additional play, which will earn sweeps coins that can be redeemed for real cash to a bank account, Skrill account, or even as a gift card. Get a free 5,000 gold coins when you sign up right now at globalpoker.com.
Poker Stories is an audio series that features casual interviews with some of the game's best players and personalities. Each episode highlights a well-known figure in the poker world and dives deep into their favorite tales, both on and off the feld.
Hello and welcome to Poker Stories, a podcast brought to you by Card Player, the Poker Authority, and hosted by me, Julio Rodriguez. This is episode number 104, featuring Nathan Gamble. Now, not only does Nathan have the perfect last name to be a professional poker player, but according to him, he was born to play cards. Nathan started playing poker before he was even a teenager, eventually graduating from the family stud games in Texas to online Royal Hold'em, and eventually all-night games with his dad. After high school, Nathan went to Colorado for college, graduating with a degree in international business. He then decided to enlist in the Army, serving as a field artillery officer while stationed in Korea. After leaving the Army, he worked towards becoming a helicopter pilot. But all this time, poker kept calling him back. Nathan made a deep run in the 2016 WSOP main event, and a year later he returned to the series and won his first career bracelet, banking nearly $250,000 for winning the $1,500 PLO 8 or better event. As it turns out, Nathan is a very good PLO player. He has 11 Omaha cashes overall at the WSOP, and he is currently lending his commentary skills to the ongoing Galfond challenge between Phil Galfond and Chance Kornuth. In July, Nathan won his second gold WSOP bracelet, this time taking down the $600 buy-in PLO 8 or better online event. Enough intro. Here is my conversation with Nathan Gamble. I am here with Nathan Gamble. Nathan, how you doing?
Good, Julio. How you doing?
I'm great. It's November, ready to turn the page on this year. Start from scratch. How are you feeling these days?
I'm doing good. As you said, we're late November right now. Everyone keeps expecting 2020 to wrap up and everything go back to normal, and I wish that was true, but I don't think that's going to be the case. I think we got a long haul still in front of us.
Well, we could start with the weather. It's still like summer outside, so if it could get a little colder here, that'd be great. Let's talk about your poker story, because not very many people can say they started before they were a teenager. Take me
Yeah,
back to Texas and tell me what your childhood was like that led you down that path.
yeah. So I definitely had a very adventurous childhood to start off, and it's interesting. I had two older brothers, so I was the youngest of three, and I'm still told to this day I would greet my dad every day when he got home from work with a pack of Uno cards in my hand. We would just play cards and play games of any sort. I was always fascinated by them. I don't know if it's just because it was time with my dad or something else that stoked my mind, but I found poker the very first time because they were having a family reunion over at my grandparents' house, and my dad walked away from the table. I was sitting right behind him, and I was like, "Hey, Dad, can I play a hand while you're away?" And he was like, "Yeah, sure, whatever. You'll probably fold it anyway." And it's like 7 card stud. We get to the river, and I played it absolutely terrible. I'm an 8-year-old kid. I don't know anything. I tried betting, and my cousin calls me, and I flip over my hand, and she's like, "Oh, if you'd raised me on fifth or bet on sixth, I would have folded because I thought you had flush." And it's just instantly like light bulbs went off. And I said, "Oh, this game's interesting, like their strategy to it. So I was literally hooked from that moment on as an 8-year-old kid. Um, but yeah, I mean,
Now, you're 30?
30, 31, yeah.
So at 8 years old, that's even before Moneymaker.
23 years ago. So yeah, 97.
Yeah, so was your dad big into poker, or was it just any kind of card game around the house?
So as a kid, it was any type of card game, but he was going to Vegas. I remember he would go to Vegas and or to Shreveport with a friend, and he would actually bring me back poker chips. He'd bring everyone else chocolate, and for some reason, I was fascinated by poker chips. I still have the collection to this day, and like I think I have casinos that no longer exist, like the Aladdin and several of those others. But he would play 10-20 limit back then. I think to this day, the biggest night he ever had, he won something like $4,000 in 10-20 limit.
That's a good night at 10-20 limit.
That's a great night. I want those at games
That's a
I
lot of
play.
big blinds. Yeah.
Yeah.
Games must have been nice back then, limit games. So the poker boom happens. This guy with a great last name for poker wins the World Series of Poker, and I'm assuming it just takes over the household, or just you and your dad, or.
Well, so before that, probably when I was about 12 years old, so we're advancing at 2001, so we're still a little bit before Moneymaker.
Mhm.
Then he was having these home games with his friends, and I remember they were just playing, the bullshit mixed games of Chase the Spade and baseball and guts, and I would sit there and watch them, and that's how I started getting more into poker. I think that's the next recollection I have of being in the game at all. I just watched them, and then Moneymaker happened, 2003. Everything switched. They stopped playing those games, and they all were like, "Oh, we should play Hold'em." And everyone's like, "What's that Hold'em stuff?" And you still had half of the crew whining off and on that they weren't playing mixed games anymore. But I just was the kid watching in the background until they moved the game over to my uncle's house, and I convinced my dad. I'm, 11, 12-year-old kid. I said, "Hey, can I play with y'all?" And somehow I weaseled my way in. I don't know how. It's so absurd when you look at it now. An 11-year-old kid playing with these 40, 50-year-old men. But he gave me $20, and I promptly lost it. I told him I'll mow the yard. Give me another 20, and he did, and I lost that. Um, and then I mowed the yard the next day. I think I mowed it one more time, a week or two later. I kept playing with them. I literally never remember mowing the yard again because I started winning. Um, I just realized there was a strategy, and I realized they were bad at it, and something clicked. And it's probably those years of Uno and Monopoly that got my brain working.
So, were you reading poker books at this time, or was it just a natural feel for the game?
I know at this stage of the game, I've probably read every poker book there is. And at that stage, I was starting to get into every book there was. I think my dad had Super System on the bookshelf, and I don't even know what was out at the time. David Skolansky, Two Plus Twos, their entire collection. So I read. Uh, I couldn't satiate my desire, and I. But it's also intuition. So there was a hand that developed one of the nights that my uncle raised, and it's no limit hold'em. So let's say we're playing 25, 50 cents. He makes it $2. I make it $5. I have pocket queens. I probably have a $25 in my stack, and it folds back to him, and he just gives some line about, "Oh, I'm not gonna get pushed around by this kid," and he shoves it all in. And I spent like 5 minutes thinking. And I just felt that he had me beat, and I folded pocket queens face up. And this is a game where people are shoving all in with king seven suited and jack five or whatever, just whatever floats their boat. And everyone is losing their minds, and he just kind of sheepishly shows pocket kings, and it's like, "How'd you know, kid?" And that's another one my dad still tells to this day of like, at that moment, I knew you were going to do something special in poker.
Yeah. And you were like, "Oh, that's on page 8 of Mike Caro's Book of Tells."
You don't remember how
Everyone
he
knows
scratched his
strong means
beard?
weak. Weak means strong.
Right?
That's great. There's a story I read about you uh, building your online bankroll from almost nothing at a very young age.
Yeah. It was around you're going through the timeline pretty accurately here because this was right within that realm of 13, 14, 15-year-old kid. I was playing free money online once I started playing with my dad and his friends, and I think I hit a royal flush on ultimate bet in spades on stud 8 or better free money, and they gave you $5 for hitting a royal flush.
Oh.
And I lost all that very quickly. And yeah, then my dad was like, "Oh, there's this $11 tournament, 100,000 guarantee or something ridiculous," and he transferred it to my account, and they didn't run the tournament for
The
some reason.
statute of limitations is up, by the way. No
Oh
one's
yeah.
going to come after your dad, I hope.
My wife actually asked me that when I started telling stories in my article recently. She's like, "Can you say that?" I was like, "I'm not worried about it." He may feel differently, but
Yeah.
and so he gave me $11 to cancel the tournament, and I was, I'm a kid. $11 is huge money. I was like, "Dad, can I transfer it back?" He's like, "Keep it, son. You got this." And I think I ran it down to like $1.37, and then I was like, I need to take this seriously. So I was on Ultimate Bet, and they had a game. I just started surfing around on what games they had that I could buy into because you have $1.37. You can play, I think, 2 cent, 4 cent limit was about it. And they had a game called Royal Hold'em, and it's essentially the ultimate short deck. It was aces through tens. Everything else was removed. And I very quickly realized that people get all in on the flop. I mean, it's limit, and they just ship back and forth and get all in on the flop with if they flop to straight. Well, if you think it through rationally, it's only 10 through ace in the deck. So by the river, the board either has to be paired or it has to be a straight. So if you're getting it all in with a straight against a set,
Or a flush.
Right?
Yeah.
Then you can't win. So if you have the set, then you're basically guaranteed to win against people getting it in with a straight. And I just started doing this, and I started realizing holes in people's games and realizing flaws. I built that up slowly to I want to say around $1,600 over the course of 6 months, a year, and
And
that was my first bankroll.
what does a 13-year-old do with $1,600?
You play online. You well, I started playing more online, and I was a kid in high school that, I want, clothes from Hollister or wherever I want. I would literally go and I would build out order online and say, okay, it's $232. I'd go into my Ultimate Bet account and I would play all day. And I would make however much money I needed. I'd hit withdraw on that exact amount and I'd hit order. Down
Take
to a
out only
science.
what you need.
Yeah.
So you're cruising along, building a modest high schooler bankroll, which is an
Yeah.
absurd sentence. And, it's time to graduate high school. What are your plans?
So that's kind of funny. I didn't really have much of one. I didn't have a lot of guidance. I was incredibly intelligent. I was like top 5% of my class without trying, but I didn't have any guidance or direction of where to go. And I'd fallen into this business program called DECA, who ran marketing and management at school. And my teacher said, "Oh, you should apply for this scholarship. I think you'd be a good fit for it." And it's for Johnson Wales University. And I said, "Okay, cool. I'll apply for a scholarship." And they called me up and they say, "You're one of the finalists for the scholarship. We want to fly you out to Colorado, show you around the campus. We're guaranteeing you like 10,000 a year. And if you continue forward in it, you can have a free scholarship for the entirety of your college."
Nice.
So 10,000 a year plus a free trip to Colorado. Sign me up. And I had wanted to be a helicopter pilot, but everyone was telling me, go to college, go to college, go to college. So this seemed like a sweet gig. I went out there. I went to the school. I did the scholarship competition. I didn't place well, so it was only 10,000 a year. Only. But you meet a couple beautiful ladies out there. You drink a little alcohol, a little statute of limitations up, right?
Yeah.
And you have some fun and you say Colorado's beautiful, the ladies are beautiful, the alcohol is good, and I am paying for part of this. So I went to Johnson and Wales. I did a international business degree.
And so, how did that lead to the armed forces?
So while I was at college, because everyone's like, "Oh, you're a poker player now. How long have you been doing it?" And 23 years. It's like, well, that's true to an extent because I was in college. I was playing in college, but it was very rough off and on. I'd win 15,000, I'd lose 15,000. I'd win. I was just constantly between flush and broke. And so I think I left college in 2011. I played my very first WSOP, first time I was 21, and I took 12th in an event, the PLO, $1,500 PLO event. I made $16,511. Sticks with me to this day. And so I went back home and I went to my parents' house. I was living with my parents. It's after college. And I just kind of, my dad has this business with a friend. I worked for them for a bit and said, no, this isn't for me. And I went and I worked for ADT, the alarm company.
Yeah.
It was the most bullshit job I've ever worked in my life. I know that's one of your future questions. I'll answer it now.
Yeah. What's the worst job you've ever had?
Yeah, it was because they hype it up and they build, we're going to teach you the ways. We're going to show you how to make money. We're going to, I was like, all right, cool, I'm in. And they eventually their entire sales technique boils down to here's a book of past clients. There's a alarm system in their building. They don't have it active anymore. Call them up. Cold call them. Half of the numbers don't work. Good luck. I was like, oh shit. And I quickly realized it wasn't for me. And then we went on a trip to Florida, which is supposed to be this great learning experience. And they're supposed to teach you the techniques. And I went out there, and there's people from all over, from New Jersey, Nevada, Texas, all over the U.S. And every person there that was there for training said the same thing was happening to them, and they didn't know how this was supposed to work, and no one felt comfortable in this company. And so I got drunk that night while I was staying with friends. We're having dinner. I'm staying with friends. I had a couple too many drinks, and some executives for ADT walk in the door, and they're like, "Oh, how's it going, guys?" I was like, "Well, your company fucking sucks, and I'm fucking out of here and going to the casino." And they're like, "What's your name?" And I just walked away. I went to a casino that night, and I think I made 2 or 3 thousand playing PLO. And I, kind of unceremoniously quit on Monday when I got back to a job. But in the interterm, I went to Vegas. I literally said, "Screw it, I'm not even going back." I was supposed to go back for one more day of work that week. I skipped that day of work. I went to Vegas. I made another couple thousand, and then flew back. My boss was sending me these angry messages of, "What'd you do? Who are you?" Da, 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 da. I was like, "I'll see you on Monday." So I go back on Monday, just quit, and the money eventually dried up from poker, and I didn't have any other source of income. And that's when I was looking around. I was like, "Well, what do I do now?" And I honestly, I kind of got bored, and I didn't know where to go with my degree. Poker wasn't working at that point in time, and I just said, "You know what? I've always wanted to join the military and challenge myself." So I spent probably a week doing research, and I walked into a recruiter and said, "Hey, I want to be an officer."
That's crazy. I mean, I know you said you wanted to fly helicopters, but that seems like a very drastic choice at that point in your life. Most people make that decision, right out of high school or
Uh,
uh, for the funds to go to college.
yeah, I was, let's see, graduated in 11. I joined in 2013, so I would have been 24, 23 and a half when I went in. Um, and if you have a degree, you can go in as an officer. You have to go through this interview process, and they make sure
Oh,
you
okay.
qualify. And so I spent, is April 15th, 2013, which is the exact same day as the Boston Marathon bombing. So I remember that very distinctly because at the airport, all the TVs are just, breaking news, bombing, people dead, we're under attack. And I'm just like, holy shit. You don't know. You don't know the full story. You don't know the extent of it. And that's what I was going into. It felt like you were going in, you signed up and you're going basic training on 9/11. It was the
Yeah.
absolute craziest time when a domestic terrorist attack happened the day that you were shipping off. I remember that day very vividly.
Obviously, you don't have to talk about this if you don't want to, but could you talk about, your time in basic training and eventually what that led to,
Oh
your
yeah,
role in the army?
yeah. And we talked a little before we started this up today. I'm an open book. You may catch me for a second, but now in basic training, I went to Fort Benning, Georgia. It's middle of nowhere. I'm trying to remember what the actual city is nearby, but it's still known as one of the holdouts on old school training, because they would kind of go through techniques that are frowned upon in the rest of the military and have been banned, but they still get away with it. So we had,
Are you
drill.
talking about
Mhm.
hazing, or are you talking about the actual training itself?
I would go more with like, by modern day standards, hazing.
Okay.
I'll tell you some of like exactly what I'm referencing, but the thing was, most of these drill sergeants had just come back from the war. So a lot of them had just come back from combat, and now they're placed with basically, in their eyes, kids, and they're babysitting. They don't want to be with us. And one of them had just gone through sniper school twice and had failed out both times. So he's a, you know, rather crusty old man at us young kids. And so is every day you're never alone. That's the biggest portion that has an effect on people. When you're asleep, when you're pissing, when you're shaving, when you're eating, when you're exercising, when you're breathing, there's at least one other person beside you, but usually 50 to 150 people. You're never alone. And so you get there and it's just, you have your bunk and this is where you sleep. And when I say sleep, it's all relative, because you would exercise all day, every day. You'd be going in the hot sun of Georgia in the middle of summer, and you'd never get enough sleep. And it got to the point that drill sergeants check on you in the middle of the night. You have a fire guard desk, is what it's called, where you have someone on guard at all times to make sure nothing happens. And they would walk in and check in and make sure everyone's still there. And he walked in the door, and they're quiet. They're trying to let everyone sleep. But my bunk was right beside the door, and I jumped out of my bunk and I went to attention and I like called out like, drill sergeant on deck. I was completely dead asleep. I have no idea this happened,
Wow.
except for people told me about it. Um, and that happened throughout the course of my training. I still like don't sleep the best. And I think it does go back to some extent because of training. Um, so I'm writing a book. I talked about that in a podcast I did with Run Chucks recently, and it's been a long process in the making. But it starts off with this very story. Is at basic training, I actually got to go back to barracks with one other soldier who needed to go on medical leave. So it's just me and him, and it's just the two of us. It's the most blissful experience of having like only one person beside you. And then the rest of the company comes back, and you're inside, you hear the drill sergeant yelling outside. And he's yelling. And then there's a thundering of feet, and they all come, running in the doors, thrashing around, just, move out of the way, move, move, move. And they run into the bathroom and start filling their canteens. And, me and the other guy are just like, all right, like, we don't know what's going on, but we're not part of it. We're gonna stay here, right, buddy? So they run outside, and drill sergeant starts yelling, and you hear thunder and feet, and it's quiet, dead quiet for like 7, 8 minutes. And then they come running back up, and they repeat this process 3 or 4 times. And what was happening was, someone messed up, and the drill sergeant had them take their canteens. They had 30 seconds to chug it, and then drain the rest over their head, come up, refill their canteens in the bathroom, then run outside and run a lap around the track, which is a quarter mile. But first, they have to get to the track, which is downhill in the sand, probably another quarter mile.
Oh my God.
And that was just a process back and forth for probably 4 or 5 times. So mile to 2 miles worth of running and chugging. And at the end of it, they come inside and they all just look queasy. And the drill sergeant, gets everyone in a parade rest. And he says, "Which one of you motherfuckers is going to throw up on my drill pad?" And like basically everyone like raises their hand. He's like, "Get outside, go!" And they all run outside and just are throwing up everywhere.
Oh,
And like you can't do that in the military. That's completely banned nowadays. That went out, probably in Vietnam. But that
oh,
that's the sort of stuff that like Fort Benning, like they pushed you physically, but they also did a little bit beyond that they were not supposed to.
ooh! My stepbrother was a Marine, and
Oh,
he told me the
God
stories about
bless.
in training about the gas chamber that they would make them go in
Oh yeah.
and take the mask off. Did you have to do that?
I think I did.
That's
And I've done
brutal.
it many times.
Oof!
Three, four, 5 times.
I just saw a video of people coming out without their mask, just like completely
Slobber.
blind, and everything's coming out of their face, every hole.
Oh yeah. It'll clean you out. Uh,
So, how long before they let you fly a helicopter?
well, so I actually didn't fly helicopters in the military.
Oh, okay.
Um, I was a field artillery officer in the military. And I went to officer candidate school, and that's where you say, like, this is what branch I'm going to go into. And I said, oh, I'm going into aviation. And he said, no, you're not. I said, what do you mean? So the recruiting office had never had an officer come into their doors before, someone wanting to be an officer, and they didn't know the process. But if you want to go aviation, you have to have an eye exam, you have to have a flight physical, you have to go through extensive paperwork before you ever get to that stage. So anyone that was going to be a pilot had already been vetted and had all this paperwork done. So it wasn't a last minute thing. You can just be like, yes, I'm going in. They're like, no, you're not. So I kind of got hosed and ended up not going aviation as I wanted to. I went into field artillery, which took me to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, where I was doing training out there from Halloween until June of, I want to say, 16 to 17. Oh, no, I don't remember timelines. 14 to 15. And then I was in Korea for about a year and a half, which is where I met my wife out there. And then I came back and I was actually stationed at Oklahoma again. And after I got out of the military, I had 3 years of the GI Bill. And um, I went to Hawaii for a minute, married my wife. She was a girlfriend at that time. We got married in Hawaii. And then I actually went to World Series, which is where I won bracelet number one. I won a bracelet, and then I went off to flight school. And I used my GI Bill to go and learn how to fly helicopters. So I did that
Got it.
for a year and just said, this isn't for me. Like on a scale of 1 to 10, it's like a 6. I don't want to spend the rest of my time away from my wife. We've already been apart for 2 or 3 years. But I mean, I got to the point I flew a helicopter completely by myself. I have 80 plus hours under my belt. I didn't end up getting any of my licensing solely because I realized that I wasn't interested enough to fly. That wasn't worth it for me to go through the rigor that I was going to have to. So,
Wow. That's crazy that you signed up for the army to get there, and I guess you did kind of get there through the army
right.
in a roundabout way. Okay, so you're over there, you're stationed in South Korea, and whenever you get a break, are you going taking trips to Vegas? Is that kind of how it works?
Oh, God, no, I wish.
Because you have tournament results during the time in which you were in the military. So how did that work?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. So in Korea, you get 2 weeks that you're able to go anyplace. I actually went to Germany to visit a friend, but while I was stationed in Korea, I would meet up with my wife, girlfriend at the time. We would take a train, and she was 3 hours south of me. She was stationed down at a different camp, and I would go to the casino first because she got off of work late. And there's I think it's Walker Hill, if I'm not mistaken, and I would go there and I would play No Limit Hold'em, and sometimes I would play a tournament. And I actually won one of their tournaments for a couple $1,000s. So I would still I kind of kept sharp on playing. but when I was in Fort Sill, Oklahoma, so 2015, 2016 would be the results you're looking at, right?
I got all your results up.
Fair, fair, fair. Um, yeah, so 15 and 16, I was in. So you'll actually see a gap in there from like June 2013 until probably September of 2015, I want to say, or maybe even longer than that, because I was actually overseas or stationed anywhere else. But yeah, so if we look, I'm seeing what you're seeing here with 16. In 16, I was in the military that entire time, and I would take leave. I would take leave and say, hey, I'm going to go, into Oklahoma. So a lot of those ones are from Oklahoma tournaments.
Oh,
And
Choctaw, yeah.
yeah, Choctaw.
Or
I actually won that one for the record. We chopped it up, and I got third place for tax purposes, but I won that Congress high-low. Just saying.
Nobody's tournament results page is accurate.
Yeah,
It's
that's
one of the
fair.
craziest things. We actually, this was like 12 years ago, got a visit from the IRS here at Card Player, and we were like, "What do you want?" And they were like, "Where do you get your results? How do you know they're accurate?" And apparently, they were trying to use that information to talk to some poker players, but we were like, "None of this is accurate. It's just reported by the casino. It
Dang,
doesn't take into account deals half the time.
that's
So we took the
that's
heat
good to
off the
know.
community."
Appreciate you doing the Lord's work out there, Julio.
Yeah, we're trying. Now Canada's not being too friendly to their players apparently. So
Yeah, hey, we're all playing a game of luck. Jonathan Giacomo's followers just hit me up. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I feel you on that.
All
Um,
right. So you are in your last year in the army, and you make a deep run in the World Series of Poker main event. Finish 176th for 42K. Is that kind of what made you decide poker? Poker's the way to go.
so as we've said, I've been playing poker off and on for it's in my blood.
Yeah.
I was listening beforehand, re-listening to one you did with Doyle, and he's talking about maybe poker is genetic when you look at Pam and you look at Todd. It's in my blood. So that one, that main event, I was down around 25 or 30,000 going to the main event. I've been staying all around town because whether it's free or cheap, I think I was staying at the Luxor that day, and I didn't even have the money in my pocket to buy into the main event. I didn't have any friends in town. I haven't until recently had many friends within the poker world, and I transferred money from one account to like my Bank of America account, so I could go to a bank and withdraw the money, and it didn't transfer. So I hit up my dad and said, "Hey, can you send me whatever I needed, 4 or 5 thousand?" And he was like, "Yeah, I can do that." And I was like, "Yeah, I'll transfer from this other account." And thankfully, it showed up. And then I looked on my phone and I said, "Oh, here's a Bank of America." I walked down there because I didn't want to spend the money on a taxi. It's summertime in Vegas. Terrible
Yeah,
idea.
that's awful.
It's not a bank. It's an ATM. You can't withdraw the money. So then I have to take a taxi. I go to a bank, and this is very like day 1D or 1E or whatever it is, very last day. I'm already 2 hours late to
Yeah,
registration.
half the field's already gone.
Yeah, I go to this bank and I'm like, hey, I need to withdraw like a lot of money. Like, hopefully you can do it. Please, please, please. And they're like, oh, yeah, whatever, kid. It's 10,000. Here you go. And you're like, oh, thank God. And so I withdraw and I rush to the taxi. I rush to the Rio. I think I'm 3.5 hours late to the last day of the main event. But I'd sold off action to family and friends. I probably had 65% of myself. And now I said I was going to play it. I'm going to play it. And that was a summer saver for me, by far and away. And everyone was congratulating me. It's, oh, it's amazing. It went in like I'm still in the military. They're like, this is huge, and it went in like the company's report up to battalion of like, oh, we have a poker player in our midst. I'm like, what is going on? Like, I had a break even summer. I made like $4,000. Like, everyone thinks it's just awesome. And you're like, yeah, guys, it was nice.
Yeah. Well, you got some street cred in the
Oh yeah.
barracks at least. So you get out of the army, and do you just head straight to Vegas, or do you have like a plan in place?
Well, let me back it up one, because we have probably my most interesting cash on record while I was still in, right before I got out. That's the Windstar main event on September 6th.
Okay.
So I I was still in the military. I talked with my boss. I said it's a 4-day weekend. I think it always lands Memorial Day. I said, hey, I'm going to fly up to Wyoming to for a wedding. He said, okay, cool. So my plan was, and this is what happened. I played the Windstar main event on Thursday, I believe, day one, until about 3 in the morning, and they resumed on Sunday if you made day two. I played until about 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, drove down to Dallas, had breakfast with my parents, hopped on a flight to middle of nowhere, Wyoming,
Hmm.
rented a car. And so I'm on like an hour and a half of sleep. Rent a car, drive to a small little hotel, 45 minutes from the airport. I don't know anyone there but the groom, and I make a couple friends. We start drinking. We go to the wedding. Enough bottles of wine start flowing. This seems to be a common theme. I swear I'm not an alcoholic, but you know,
He's your social drinker.
very much so. I will have a glass, and it gets to the point where they're like, "Hey, you've had enough to drink. We'll drive you home." So we leave my car at the wedding reception site. And I wake up, middle of the night. I may have desecrated their hotel room, tried to clean it up with some, you know, bath towels and threw it in a bathtub. I still feel bad for the maid,
Oof.
but I uh, I look at my phone and I read the tickets. 10:07 flight. I look at my phone. It's like 7:30. I have a 45-minute drive to get to my car, plus probably a 30-minute drive from there to get to the airport, and I have a tournament to get back to. So like I can't like miss this
Yeah, it's
flight.
not
This
it's
is
not like you could sleep in like any other Degen poker player. You
Yeah,
have to be there.
we're not messing around here. Like there's money on the line. So I go downstairs and I say, hey guys, I need a taxi. I say, oh honey, this is Wyoming. We don't have taxis out here. I said, oh fuck. I don't know anyone. I don't, I drank with a bunch of people, but I don't have their numbers. So they literally get the maintenance man to take a break and drive me to this reception. And we're chatting the whole time while I'm trying to not throw up in his car. And
Brutal.
he's nice enough to be like, oh, like you're military. I appreciate what you're doing. Don't worry about it. 'Cause I was trying to like pay him for his time. He's like, don't worry. I was like, okay, man. Like, I jump in the car. I fly to the airport, trying not to get pulled over. I show up and the airport's not even open. I'm like, my flight's in like 45 minutes. What do you mean the airport's not open? I like double check my ticket and I read the flight number 1037.
Oh man.
Thankfully, I had 3 hours to catch my flight.
I was about to say you didn't miss a plane, I hope.
No, no. And so so everything resolves itself. I make my way home, and I made it back to Windstar, and I had it's kind of my saddest moment as well in poker because at 13 people left,
Hold on,
I
hold on. I gotta
was
set up the question.
okay. Okay,
What was the most painful close finish of your poker career?
yeah, this is it. um, we had 13 people left. I was second in chips to Gordon Vayo, who was first in chips, and the Windstar main was a special one. They guaranteed $1 million for first place, but they didn't have the prize pool to support it. So it went like 1 million for first, 220,000 for second.
Yeah, I'm looking right now. Gordon ended up winning it for 587, so they must have did a deal.
And that's the thing. So at 13, I'm second in chips. I know if I make the final 5 or 6 people, I'm not guaranteed the 50,000 on paper. I'm guaranteed probably quarter million, 300,000, 400,000. So I go from second in chips at 13 to busting
Mm,
at 11.
oof.
And I make 25,000, which is nice. It's good money. But you last 5 more people, it's quarter million easy.
Was it
Which
a
I,
particularly tough beat? Did you make a mistake or?
I messed up, not a question about it. Who I think it was it Grant? I want to say it's Grant Hinkle. I'm pretty sure. Raised on the button. yeah, whatever it was at that time, somewhere between 2x and 7x. It was, 2016, who knows? And I just open ripped from the big blind for 38 big blinds with ace 8 suited.
Wow.
I think I was just tired. I had a long weekend. I was just like, you know what, let's go.
That's a wide
And
opening play.
yeah, he went. He had pocket queens, and that's the story.
Ouch. Ouch.
So, but yeah, it was probably the most interesting tournament I've ever played with that 2 or 3 day hiatus in between.
Well, let's get to the highlights then.
Uh,
We fast forward a year, and you are at the World Series of Poker in the $1,500 pot limit Omaha 8 or better event. You take it down, win the bracelet for $223,000.
say it
First
again.
of all,
Uh,
how did you find yourself in that event?
I shouldn't have played it. So I just came from Hawaii. I've been married 23 days prior, and we had already agreed I was going to a World Series of Poker. And she knew she's okay with me being a poker player. And I played probably 5 or 6 events before them, and I was burned out. I'd been out there for 2 or 3 weeks, and I was ready to take a break. I hit up a friend back home and said, "Hey man, I'm thinking of coming back to Texas. You around?" He said, "No, I'm down in Houston. Come next week." So I was supposed to fly out the day of the PLOA event. I wasn't even supposed to play it. And I said, okay, well, I guess I'll play this event and then see where you're at. And day one, I honestly don't remember anything of note. It's just another tournament. I made it through nice and easy. Day two was a struggle. I got down to about 5 big blinds before or right after we made the money, and then had a serendipitous hand where everyone decided to limp in for some reason, and I had like king 9-4 on the button, hit trips on the flop, and probably got up to about 15 or 20 big blinds, and I think it was enough to make me be able to limp into day three with like 27 people left or something like that.
It was a
And
lot.
yeah, and day three I was playing well, and I mean, if you check the updates, even now, it's at the final table. It says what was happening then, but it's the course of the entire day because it's talking about how I was on fire. I couldn't be stopped. I was a runaway train. I was the most dominant performance of the year, and that was my day three. Whatever I needed happened. If I needed a 1-outer, it came. If I needed 2 outs, it came. If I needed the guy to break 32 outs, it happened. It was um, it was fast. It was furious, and it was uh, yeah, it was nice.
So what are you feeling as you can see the bracelet at the finish line? You know what I mean? There's 6 players left, 5, 4. How are you feeling as it's becoming closer and closer? And not only that, but you're also locking up a bigger payday.
So I was chip leader, I think, throughout the entire final table, to the point I didn't check paydays. I was in charge. We got down to, I believe it was final 4 people, and we took a dinner break. Someone said, "Okay, I won it." I went to Aria with my buddy, and we're talking through things. We're talking strategy. We're talking how things are rolling, and he said, "Okay, like I'm playing cash game. I'll drop you off, and then I'll wrap up the cash game. I'll come rail you." I said, "Okay, cool." We came back, and it was exactly 1 hour and one hand of playing because the blinds went up on the very first hand of heads up. So we played exactly 1 hour, and the very first hand, I was the victor. And so it literally happened so fast. I knocked out 4 peoples in 1 hour and one hand. It happened so quickly that I didn't have time to register. I I was in shock. I was in disbelief. It didn't feel real holding a bracelet, looking at the money. There was one guy on my rail I knew, and he's just like looking at me like, "Holy shit, you just did it." I'm like, "I just did it. I have a video," and I'm just like, I point the bracelet. I'm literally pointing at it. I'm like, "This just happened," and you just see it in my face. You see this sense of relief and disbelief, and it got. I mean, to be real, Julio, like what happened is like I had that. I had the entire moment. He left. He went off to play some craps or whatever. I went and I played 2040 Omaha 8 or better. I didn't tell a soul. I didn't tell the floor. I didn't tell the people I was playing with. I played for 3 or 4 hours because I had to just release that tension and calm down. Um,
Wow.
it was it happened so suddenly. I just needed that like release.
That's a great story. My buddy Michael Gross actually finished fourth in that tournament.
Oh,
Uh,
Michael. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know Mike.
yeah, he's uh he's since moved to Florida. I hope he's doing well. Um, but yeah, that's great. So what do you keep the bracelet, or the first bracelet, I should say?
Well, so I actually gave bracelet number one to my dad. Bracelet number two went to my mom. But on this most recent trip, they were here not too long ago, and someone had requested to see them in Vegas. So they brought them both to Vegas, and they're actually sitting about 6 inches from me right now.
Oh, that's cool. You get part-time custody.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's cool. All right, so let's talk about the second bracelet because that happened this summer and it was much different, even though the event was similar.
Yeah, it was so obviously, we've had the pandemic that's upon us, and that caused the WSOP to shift over into the online realm. And this year it was a $600 PLO 8 six max tournament. So the buy-in was different, the format was a little different. But before it happened, I went to the back room. I told my wife, you have the dogs. This is the one that I feel I have a good shot of winning. If I'm going to win anything this summer, this is it. And I went into it quite honestly, saying, I don't quite respect these as bracelets. I don't know. I'm in it for the large prize pool. How many times do you have a chance to play a PLO8 event with 90K up top? Never. And when we got down to the final 7 people, it was a battle back and forth. I've been a chip leader literally the entire tournament up until then. At the final 7, it was a battle back and forth just to make it to the final table. I was constantly a short stack. And then at the final table, once I got there, I had some key pots go my way, and I was like, "Oh, I can do this. This is real." And we got down to heads up, me and I think it's Danish 01, if I remember correctly.
A
And
guy named Shane Daniels.
yeah, I owe him my bracelet. I owe him the extra 40,000. And I say that, and with all due respect, he played heads up terribly. I thought he played most of the tournament terribly. Um, well, so the reason I say this is seven-handed. He was at our table. We had 4 people at our table. He was the monstrous chip leader, had 5 times as much as anyone else, and he would either limp or fold on my big blind when he was in the small blind 100% of the time. He never raised. He never applied any pressure. If he limped, then I would just re-raise him. If he folded, obviously I just win. And it got to a point it was almost absurd. Like he was trying to keep me in. I don't understand it. So he is a perfect heads up opponent. Um,
Maybe he knew that you had won a previous PLO 8 bracelet and he was practicing avoidance.
he was scared. He was real scared.
Exactly.
Um, but I went in, I think, with an 8-1 chip lead, and he actually made a comeback and took the chip lead several times. And I went in just cocky and confident, and said, "I got this. This guy's easy." And he put up a fight. And once he took the chip lead, it became real. I said, "Oh, like I have a chance to lose this. How much extra money is on the line? There's a bracelet on the line. Oh shit!" Like it became a lot more real. And once I closed it out, then it was kind of the same feeling as a surge of relief. I think it was 2:30 in the morning, and I just felt relief spread through my body. I didn't go to bed for 3 hours. I just kind of sat there and hung out and just chilled. And it because I'd won previously, in a live event, and I now had the online, and I had the same wave of emotions. It changed my attitude towards the online segment. And I said, okay, this is a real bracelet. It has the same feeling. It has the same connection. It has that same notoriety attached to it.
Yeah, and obviously being in the two bracelet club is a lot more exclusive than the one bracelet club. Did you feel a sense of validation?
My my wife's parents don't understand poker, and when they heard I won it, they said, "Oh, that's cool, good job." I looked it up online, and at that point in the summer, there's 237 people other than me who had done this in the entire
Yeah.
world. And so I felt like when you can look at that and you can say, yeah, like I did something 237 other people have done in the world. Like that puts you into such an exclusive club. And I felt like that was a moment of validation I could point to and say, yeah, I'm not just a one shot, I'm not a fluke. Um, I'm something special. So there was definitely a sense of validation within that.
Well, that's a surprising number. I would have guessed it's more.
Yeah.
It's does that include everyone with 3 or more and 4 or more and all that?
Yep. Yep.
Wow.
I think it jumped after that because several other people won online duels. So I think it's around 250 right now. But
Yeah, still we'll be decades away from that being 1,000 people. You're
yeah,
going to be in a small company for a while. Um okay, so obviously I look at your results and I'm seeing a lot of caches for PLO 8 or better. Um what is it about your game that is well suited to that format?
when I was in that hiatus between college and the military, I was playing at Windstar, I was playing No Limit Hold'em, I played a little bit of '08, and someone approached me and asked if I want to deal underground games in Dallas. And I dealt underground '08 games for a while. So I have a lot of experience with like, is limit, but still like the split pot concept. And for some reason, I took that with me for about a year of dealing that and just watching. And then when I was playing in college, most of what I was playing was sit and goes, and for some reason I gravitated towards PL08 specifically. And I was just getting in 50 to 100 reps a day of sit and goes of PL08. And I think it's just how I view the game. It's how I process things, how I look at the split pot nature, and it's very different than a lot of people. And I've transitioned even now into the mixed game community, and the majority of those games are split pot games, and it's allowed me to adapt and very quickly get to a point of being a winning player in mixed games because just understanding split pot dynamics is I think critical for that success.
What do you think is the biggest obstacle for players trying to get into mixed games? Like, what's the first hurdle for them for that thing to click or be unlocked in their brain?
Well, the first hurdle at this stage, because of online poker not offering it, especially stateside, a little bit, around the world, but is there aren't games available.
Yeah.
Um, so there's no low stakes games. There's a 918 that sometimes runs over at the Aria. Um, but how do you say like learn mixed games? Come into our 3060 game,
Yeah, and even 918 is not a beginner stakes.
right? You can still lose, 800 trying to learn that in a night, trying to learn the rules. So the biggest hurdle in mixed games specifically is that hurdle of trying to find stakes and trying to have an intro level. So I've talked with people trying to build bridges between games. Sometimes pre-COVID there was a 3060 game at Bellagio and 8160 over at the Win, and there's no bridge between them. There's no bridge between a 918 and a 3060. There's no 2040. There's no bridge beneath the 918. There's no meetup games, but people are interested in them. People want these stakes. They just don't have the connections to make it happen. They just don't have the ability to make that work. So that's what's brought me into a large part of the media side is trying to establish a bridge for mixed games, establish a home for the community of mixed games. Is I want to give back for everything that poker has given me, and try to find an avenue for people to come into this world.
So, is mixed your general game of choice, mixed cash, your general game of choice these days?
Yeah, yeah. I started playing April of last year. I said I'm a very fast study on it, and I started playing. I think I played 4.8 or 9.18, whatever it was back then, Aria, in April of last year, and now my regular game is the 8160 over at Win.
Now, the people in that game, would we recognize them? Would the people at home recognize them? Or are these the quiet killers who come in and they don't need the limelight of tournament success?
Well, Do you know the name Ollie Najat or Brandon Shack Harris?
I
Joe
should interview
Tian.
both of them.
Yep. Two of my favorite podcasts you've done. Joe Tian plays in there. Mark Gregorich plays in there. Um, but there is still a handful of people that are, beneath the radar. No names to it, but very very good guys. And we've built that game as it's not private by any stretch of imagination. We all text each other. We have a group chat, and we say, "Hey, like, who wants to play today?" If someone new comes in, if they see us at the casino and they say, "Oh, I want in," it's like, if there's a seat open, there's a seat open. But we also will add them to the list of like, "Hey, here's a group chat," because we realize that so often we would just show up to Bellagio when it's run back there, and it would sit around for 3 or 4 hours twiddling your thumbs because several guys had said, maybe I'll play tomorrow.
Yeah.
So we've established a nice community within the mixed game world for that game. And it's a weird environment, Julio. It's weird. We're space aliens. But we'll all go and grab dinner after the game or have lunch before the game. So it's a lot of friends, but we're also doing it obviously for the money.
Yeah, let's get into some rapid fire questions here. You are named Gamble. I mean, obviously Chris Moneymaker winning the main event. That was his name was a big part of it. Do you feel like your name led you down the path of poker in any way?
I don't think I could have kept off this path if I wanted to. I
You don't think if your name was Nathan Tax Accountant, you would have gone a different route?
No, we had this conversation. I think it was in the 80 game the other day of how much would someone have to pay you to change your name? And if you change my first name, okay, like it wouldn't cost you too much. I don't have over attachment to it, but to change my last name at this stage of the game would cost one hell of a lot. But
You have to bet
it's
you to
too
do it.
perfect.
I'll
Yeah.
just bet you that you won't change your last name. That's
It
how
would
you
have to
do
be a large bet.
it. I just imagine you growing up and people always saying, "Oh, he took a gamble." Constant puns, constantly about you gambling, and then it's like Inception.
It's I honestly I feel like if I had been born a couple of years earlier and had the success I did a couple of years earlier, then I mean for full tilt for ultimate bet party poker whoever it was back in the day, like they would have gobbled me up as an ambassador without a second thought.
Let's talk a little bit about the Galfond Challenge because you have been lending your commentary skills to that heads-up battle. For those who don't know what's going on, can you give a quick summary?
Yeah, so Phil Galfond put out a challenge back last year to the world and said he will offer odds for anyone that wants to challenge him in heads up PLO. Several people have taken that challenge. Action Freak and Vinny Vidi are online challengers, and he beat both of them at the onset of the pandemic back in February through um, July timeframe. And now Phil is at the stage of battling against Chance Corneth. So Chance represents Chip Leader Coaching. He's their head coach and founder of Chip Leader Coaching, while Phil is the head coach and founder of Run It Once. So Phil laid Chance 4-1. So it's Phil's $1 million to Chance's $250,000, and it's over the course of 35,000 hands online, heads up PLO. They're playing two tables at once. So right now we're about 45% of the way through this challenge, and it's been a back and forth battle, Julio. At the onset, you saw Phil jumping out to a $280,000 lead very quickly, and it got to a point that busted Chance's roll online. We had to take a 2 week hiatus. He stopped playing. He reloaded. Took his briefcase full of cash down to Caesar's Palace, reloaded his account, and then he made one hell of a comeback. He erased the deficit from Phil, and then he took a lead of 340,000. And we're on break right now. Phil got some momentum going, and he's down about 90,000, which for how we've seen this challenge going is pretty respectable. And we're on break right now for a couple weeks over Thanksgiving holidays, as well as Chance has a WPT final table to play on December 3rd. So they're kind of letting him have that time to adjust his mindset and hopefully take down that $500,000 prize over there. But yeah, I'm doing that with Henry Kilbane. For those of you that watch WSOP Europe, he did the commentary for them. We're doing it with another streamer, 08 Grinder, hops in there when we're unavailable sometimes. He also takes on the Saturdays. We're doing it with Thallow, which is Alex Epstein, won the short deck 10K event at the World Series. So it's really just a great group of guys and a great group of commentary. And I mean, honestly, the reason that we're doing this, the viewership isn't what we want right now. We're trying to tweak some things. It's no Doug Polk versus Negreanu where they're getting 6,000 people a day. But the reality of life is we believe in Phil Galfond. We believe in Run It Once and what he's trying to do for this community, because he's trying to give back and he's trying to build a positive platform for poker, both in his training site as well as his poker site. And honestly, for me, whatever we can do to support him, we owe it to him. So that's a lot of why we're doing it. And he's won every challenge so far. He's down right now, but I think there's a very good chance he'll beat Chance on this one.
Yeah, if he takes a gamble.
Take a chance on gamble.
Exactly. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are in general about these heads-up matches that seem to be happening these days. Obviously, it was a little bit born out of necessity after the pandemic kind of shut live poker down for a bit. But what are your thoughts? Do you like the idea of this trend continuing for a while? Do you want to get involved yourself? Do you think Phil will challenge you to PLO 8?
First time I ever met Phil was when he won the PLO8 event, the 10K. I took 17th or 18th that year. I have an 18th and a 17th in that one. I think it was 18th, but I met him there. Very, very nice guy. He'll be the first to tell you PLO8 is not his strong suit, which is funny with a 10K bracelet. So I think what poker goes doing that live format is really the way forward. The Antonio versus Phil Hellmuth, because it has a dynamic. You can watch the players. You feel that energy going back and forth. And I mean, I harken back to the Rail Heaven days, though.
Right.
You remember, was it Hastings versus Isildur?
Yeah, Brian Townsend as well.
Yeah. Well, the $4 million night.
Mm-hmm.
I watched that thing through and through, and so I think there is a little revitalization of poker that is coming off of this pandemic, and I think it's definitely good for poker. It's never going to be bad to have public matches out there like this.
Yeah, I was thinking back. Even Daniel back in the day when the Wynn card room first opened, had that series of I think it was $500,000 each challenge in every game, and he and Barry Greenstein did battle for a long time. Heads up.
Barry, Mimi Tran, which was Barry's girlfriend / protege at the time. Yeah.
So, I read that you were a theater student. I myself got a scholarship to college for some high school theater. I'm wondering what roles you played.
Oh God. Well, so the first couple of years of high school, I was on the tech side. So I did tech theater, and then I switched over to, the actual acting part of it. Let me tell you a story, Julio. Let me tell you a story. So we had to audition for a role in theater class, and you had to memorize a 3-minute monologue beforehand. And that was what your performance piece was for the audition. And I got probably too caught up in poker and never actually memorized one. So I went on stage and I literally just started going off the cusp. And I told this story about how I just got, out of jail and I came home to my beautiful wife, but she was in bed with my brother. And I don't know. I just that's all I remember. But I just started going, they're like, cut. And I'm like, oh, thank God. And my theater director was like, man, that was a really good performance. Like, that was really good. Where did you get that from? I was just like, oh, Woodwork Diaries, sir. He's like, what? I've never heard of it. What is it? I'm like, all right, I just made it up on the spot. And he was just like, wait, what? I was like, yeah, I just made it up. He's like, oh, I want to read the rest of it. I was like, oh. I didn't do any major. I was a bit actor. I was never in any like scenes. I made a high school musical, and they told me not to sing. Like I wasn't the guy leading the stage by any stretch of the imagination. What
Uh,
was your most famous role in high school?
we did a show called Cinderella Wore Combat Boots,
All
and it
right.
was it was just a joke version of the Cinderella story, and I played Prince Charming, and this was
Yeah.
60 pounds ago, and yeah, apparently I was good enough that I won a college scholarship with that performance. Did one more show in college and realized, I have a face for radio. so here I am living my theater dreams vicariously through a poker podcast. Uh, but that is interesting that you have that background given how well you do with your commentary. You don't
Appreciate it.
seem to be stumbling over any words or being flustered by all the action. You said helicopter flying was a 6 out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
What would you consider a 10 out of 10?
Ooh, solid question.
I know you are an adrenaline junkie.
Yeah, that's fair. We talked about that for a second. Back in high school, I rode a bull. That's the interesting thing. Everything's different. Like I rode a bull in high school at like 18, 19, and what it taught me is like time. Because I was on there, I think I was on there the full 8 seconds, but it felt like everything was so slow. It felt like a minute long I was on there. It felt like the bull stopped at one point for 30 seconds. And, afterwards, my friend's like, oh, it stopped for like, barely half a second. And it changed the perception of time. Skydiving changes your perception of the landscape because you're able to view the world from a very, very different lens. I have my scuba diving license. I lived in Hawaii with my wife for a while, and being underwater and being floating and free almost is, it just teaches you, that feeling of freedom. Um, I did bungee jumping in New Zealand, and that was probably the most scared I've ever been in my life. Um, because like when you jump off the bridge and you don't realize there's something attached to you, and you just say, "What the hell did I just do? Why am I jumping to my death? What's going on? Oh my god! Oh my god!" And then like it catches you, and you say, "Oh yeah, thank God. There's a reason I did this." So I mean, it's like I think just living, you know, just travel is probably 10 out of 10. Going there and experiencing different cultures, going there and viewing the people around you, understanding how people live. I know probably on this rapid fire, one of the questions you ask is, "What's your biggest pet peeve in poker?"
Hmm.
And my biggest pet peeve, and this is because I'm well traveled, because I've seen people in Korea, some not in the best situations, living with the threat of war beside them. I've seen, terrorism over in Europe. I've seen the places people live in, and it's when you're at a poker table and someone is just raging and raging, they're on full blown tilt, and they lose perception. They lose where they are in the world because you're sitting in a multi-billion-dollar casino. You have whatever you want to drink at your fingertips, cold, fresh. You have a beautiful cocktail waitress. You have, thousands of dollars in front of you that you should be able to lose and not affect your life tremendously, that you're able to bring in. And when you rage and you leave, you're going to jump in your car and you're going to drive to your house. What do you have to be mad about? And
Yeah.
that's my biggest pet peeve is just like, I know multimillionaires that rage harder than the guy with $20 in his pocket, and they just have lost their perception of reality. And I think it's just people that don't have that perspective and don't appreciate with what they have in this world.
So you've been all over. Is there something left on your bucket list? Or what's at the top of your bucket list?
Before an hour and a half ago, Julio.
Don't flatter me too much.
Hey, if you think I'm kidding, I Yeah, a lot of stuff has popped up since I won that second bracelet. I not only got interviewed by Card Player, but then y'all hit me up and said, "Do you want to write articles for me?" I was smiling ear to ear. But my wife will tell you, for 3 days, I wrote my first article before I even messaged Steve back. Um, and to do this podcast so for me within the poker world, I am, bucket list is whatever comes next. That's the pinnacle. This is the pinnacle. Whatever comes next, I'm a kid with a dream in this world. But as far as like outside of that, I think a lot of it is just experiential. That's how I've lived my life so far, and I don't have anything directly on my bucket list, but I think a lot of it would be food related, of traveling and going and experiencing some of those foods. Maybe running with the bulls if we had to get into like a really nitty gritty answer for you.
Well, it doesn't have to be dangerous. I mean, obviously, that's your cup of tea.
It is. It is.
Have you ever turned anything down? Has anything been too gnarly for you?
No. Nothing that comes to mind.
That's the new challenge. All of Nate's friends listening, go out
Yeah.
and find an activity he'll chicken out of. See if he can get him.
I I learned early that you have more regrets in life for the stuff that you say no to than the stuff that you do. So yeah, I don't say no to a lot.
What's the biggest pot you've ever won or lost? It could be a dollar amount. It could be a situational one.
So obviously tournament wise, equity wise, that's the one everyone hits you with because you're talking with the big leagues, high rollers here. Yeah, we're gonna stray away from that. So cash wise, I played um, nothing overly significant, but the one that sticks out the most in my head was I had taken a trip to Hawaii from college. I stopped over at the airport. I missed my flight because of it was a time zone change and my phone didn't change over. So I was stuck at the airport for like 6 or 7 hours. I was playing online on Ultimate Bet. And I was playing heads up PLO against Yellow Sub, which is Jeff
Mm,
Williams.
yeah,
Yeah,
Jeff.
old school. Um, and I had loaded about 80% of my bankroll onto Ultimate Bet because they told me they'd give me a free seat into the main event. $3,500 seat. I was young, I was dumb, I didn't realize there was something called rollover, and that I was basically locking my bankroll down for 6 months' time if I played cautiously. So I said, screw it. I started playing 10-20 PLO, and I probably had $15,000 online, which was 80% of my bankroll. And I built up a pretty big stack, like an 8K stack. And it was heads up PLO. I want to say he was on the button. He makes it 60. I make it 180. He makes it whatever that is, 540. I make it 1620. So this is back in the heyday of PLO where no one really understood. So he has about 8K. I have 8K. I make it 1620 pre-flop. He flats it. We have 6500 behind. I have like ace 6 7. The flop comes out 4 5 5. And it's like, all right, this is a pretty solid flop. Like, I'm okay with this. Whatever I bet and he bet, and the money got in. Let's just say it. I don't think I potted it, but we probably put in like 5 or 6 back and forth raises where you should know your beat. And he ends up with something like 5 7, 9 jack, and I bink off an 8 on the turn and just nail that straight draw and thought I was the best player in the world. It's probably a 15.7K pot. And it's like that's the one that sticks out to me. It's like maybe I play a bigger pot or two, but most of my stuff is limit nowadays. And yeah, you don't cross those boundaries too often. But
Well, it's
that's the
also
one
the
that sticks
importance
out.
of that pot,
Oh,
right? What
so
happens
important.
if you don't win that pot?
Oh, so important.
That pot was so bad, Jeff quit poker, moved
Yeah,
back
no
to
one's heard
Georgia.
from him. Heard from him since.
That's good. What about the weirdest place you've ever played poker for money?
Oh, damn it. So you asked me before we started if there's any question that I want you to ask. This is the one.
Okay.
All right, Julio.
With somebody as well traveled as you, I'd be hard pressed not to ask it.
No, it's in Dallas, actually.
Okay.
So as I said, I was dealing these underground games, right? And they were in these VA centers. VA centers are obviously underground for poker clubs. Let's all be real. And this guy came in and he played for a while and talked with me outside and said, "Hey man, I'm gonna start my own joint. I want you to deal for me." I said, "All right, like I'll work a couple of nights there, a couple of nights here." So he gives me the address and I show up and I shit you not, it's this like 60, 80 acre drive-in movie theater.
Mm.
And it was this old rundown field that had been converted into a flea market. So you like drive up to the gate, you give them a call, there's barely any cell phone service, and it's this old like gate that someone has to manually come out and like crank up for you. And it's just like this fair yard carnival area where half of these booths are run down and they have cobwebs on them. Half of them have, like carnival toys and flea market items. It's this very weird atmosphere. You kind of drive back through into this little amusement park. I mean, it's kind of creepy. Let's be real. It's it's starting to get dark. It's dusk is coming down, and we go into a not convenience store, but whatever the stands are with all the food and the popcorn, the hot dogs,
Yeah.
and that's at the front. You have your soda machine, you have your ice cream machine, you have a popcorn machine at the front, and then you have in the back like 4 tables set up. And it's just the most surreal place. And I dealt there for a while. I played there a little bit off and on, but you're in the middle of this like desolate 80-acre field that's supposed to be a drive-in movie theater with creepy clown dolls as you drive in, and it was by far and away the most surreal place I've ever played poker, dealt. And I just look at that and say, like, how did no one just get killed? Like in the movie, someone always gets killed out there.
Right. I think Haunted Drive-In Carnival is the winner so far for for weirdest place, especially since it was just Dallas, not like some weird country you were in. This is
Yeah.
just in your backyard.
Yeah, it was probably 20 minutes from my house, and like I kind of had a sense of dread every time I headed there on Thursdays and Sundays. Or it was
It's a pretty regular game. Do you have a celebrity doppelganger, or have people told you look like somebody?
so in high school I got the kid's brother from High School Musical, not Zac
Oh God.
Efron, but like the other guy. I don't know. It's been a while, and
Hold on, I gotta Google this. Zac Efron's brother in High School Musical.
I, I think it was yeah. Let's see, High School.
Just getting a lot of Zac Efron pictures.
Right, of course, of
Man,
course.
he had a lot of hair.
Oh, Ryan Evan, Lucas Grabeel.
Ryan Evan, High School Musical.
Now looking at him, I'm like, yeah, when I'm clean shaven, I actually do look like the kid.
Whoa!
Yeah,
Wow.
that's fair.
He's got that Bryson DeChambeau hat on. I don't know if you
Man,
watch golf at all. Uh,
no.
that's that's a that's a look.
Let's see if I
Let
can
me.
find that one. Is
Oh, who
it?
Bryson?
Yeah.
No, it's just because of the hat.
Oh, I gotcha, I gotcha.
But yeah,
But the other one was Macaulay Culkin from Home Alone era. Apparently, at some point in time, that's been the most consistent throughout my entire life.
I could
The
see
people
it.
say that one.
I could see it as if you were younger for sure. Definitely not Macaulay Culkin now,
Thank God.
because he looks terrifying. He definitely belongs at that haunted drive-in carnival. Um,
But
but
he was married
ironic.
to oh, Mila Kunis.
Yeah.
So, if shit. I mean, if that's what I had to look like.
Exactly, exactly. It's funny you mentioned Home Alone. My daughter was watching Home Alone 2 as I walked out the door this morning.
Christmas movie.
Exactly, it's that time of the year. All right, we got a few more here. Are you superstitious at all?
No, no. I know I jokingly will like let my wife pick my clothes before I go to a mix game if I've been running bad, but
Mhm.
it's just more joke than anything.
Let's see here. What's the most entertaining thing you've watched, read, or listened to since the lockdown?
Galfond challenge. You should check it out. Let's see.
Yes, all of our listeners should check it out for sure. Where
That's a
actually, by the way,
solid
you
question.
didn't mention where can people watch that and find your commentary?
Yeah, absolutely. So I get that up on Twitch under the handle SurfBum for Life. I know you'll have that in the notes. Sometimes we run on Henry Kilbane's channel, which is just twitch.tv/Henry_Kilbane. Um, and yeah, so that
Either way,
one's
you'll tweet about it. So
it's out there a
yeah.
lot. That seems to be all my Twitter's used for these days. Um, oh, let's see, most entertaining thing. Oh, Queen's Gambit. Queen's
Okay.
Gambit. That has been on fire.
You watched the whole thing?
Oh, in like 2 days.
How are you as a chess player?
So here's the funny thing. I'm not a chess player, but my dad basically did Queen's Gambit back in the day. He was like the high school nerd that would travel, to tournament circuit, and like he played a bunch of tournaments and like was actually
Mhm.
really good at it. And he tried teaching us all, and that one never stuck with any of us.
I definitely enjoyed the series. The only issue I had was with the second episode. Um, I wish they had cast somebody younger to play a 13-year-old girl.
It's kind of
But
weird where she's like playing both a 13-year-old and then later like a
and then on a 25-year-old, and like, it's definitely weird.
yeah. I'm with you.
But she's the star. They got to put her on screen somehow. So makes sense. Do you like telling people you're a professional poker player?
Yeah, so I thought about that one a lot before this. As I said, like I know your questions, Julio. They're no surprise to me. Um, so I like it if people can be intelligent about it, because if people, they'll give you the, oh, like my cousin plays poker, this plays poker, I play poker. You just like you kind of want to give up. You
Yeah,
know, it's like if someone tells me they're an accountant, I'm not like, I do my taxes, buddy. Fuck off.
that's true.
But like I will never tell like an Uber driver or somewhere where, like, let's say I'm going to a tournament, I'll never tell someone I'm a poker player, and that's more out of self-preservation because, like, well, I'm jumping in an Uber. Where'd they pick me up from? If they pick me up from my house, they know where I live. If like
Mm.
I'm going to the casino and I have $10,000 in my pocket because I'm going to the game, I don't want them to be like, "Oh, you're a poker player. Tell me more." "Oh, where are you go? You're going to the game right now?" "Oh, like how much money you got?" It's like I'm just cognizant and aware of that stuff. So I have no problem. Like I got pulled into a conversation for literally an hour and a half at a friend's wedding because you're a poker player. Phil plays poker. Phil, come here. And like pulled over the uncle and literally an hour and a half conversation. It's like, okay, cool. Like whatever. Let's talk. If you think it's cool, we'll talk. We'll talk. But I have no problem with that. But I think from a self-preservation angle, sometimes I stray away from it.
Yeah. Well, it was nice of you to talk to Phil Ivey at that wedding. Uh, do
It's
you
kind of
have do you have a nemesis or somebody you can't beat? Someone who's always held over you?
uh,
I don't know if you've been in those games long enough to develop a rivalry.
to some extent. Well, okay, so pre-COVID, it was Ollie.
Oh, okay.
Ollie, he's yeah, it usually holds over me to some extent within the games pre-COVID. Post-COVID, no, no, I overcame that one.
Nice. Um, Favorite gambling movie?
The one Henry and I are writing.
Oh.
Oh,
Can you give us a sneak peek without losing the rights?
yeah, yeah. We started talking about it on stream the other day, and we took it offline, and we just realized that there is no real movie outside of Rounders that kind of holds clout. And we started looking into it of just like, okay, how do we write a movie? How do we market it? And so, Henry's story, was in England. He moved to Bulgaria. He started playing poker, dropped out of high school, and when he was about 18 years old, he lost a lot of his money in a mechanics game. And he thought, when he figured out they were cheating him, he thought that he could overcome them through skill, and lost the rest of his money. So what we're kind of doing right now is looking into like an opening scene where it's, that dark hotel room and the guy's passed out and there's clearly a party raging in the other room. The girl walks in, she says, "Hey, Harry, like, what are you doing? Like, wake up! Everyone's here for you. You're the world champ." And he's just in this fog, and you're getting the sense that he's the champion. He just won, but he doesn't feel like he belongs. This isn't the world he's used to. And they're talking, and it kind of does this fade away where it's like, let me tell you why I don't belong. Let me tell you where I came from. And it's flashing back into that poker world, that kind of gritty world of where he came from, and how he came
The
up
come
from a
up
child
story.
into being a world champion of poker.
I like it. There needs to be something serialized, I think, with poker. It's really hard to tell the whole story in 2 hours.
Yeah,
Uh, Maybe you should turn into a mini series like the Queen's Gambit.
that's where we derive some inspiration from. So we have some banter back and forth on a pretty regular basis, and we're honest with each other if we think it'll work or if we think what the other one put out there is garbage.
You listening, Hollywood?
Hey, I
Make it
got
happen.
connections. Got some connections.
There are dozens of us who want to see this.
At least 21.
All right. Do you have a bold prediction for poker's future?
Yeah. Um, I think we are going to see the death of No Limit Hold'em with the rise up of solvers, with the anti-socialness of No Limit Hold'em, where people are just sitting around and just staying to themselves and not talking. And I think what you're going to see is it going predominantly towards mixed games. So if you have a mixed game where it's 5 to 15 games, wherever they're playing, doing a solver for that is so much harder. How do you do a solver for, Badusi, Badesi, Dramaha, Raz, Stud, No Limit Hole, Double Board? How do you have a solver for 15 different games all at once? And it forces people to, for some reason, it's a more social game. It forces people to actually just be thinking players. So I think as we see solvers, real-time assistants become more and more and more prevalent, and people going away from poker for no limit hold'em in cash games, I think if we grow the community properly, then they will grow into the mixed game world, and we just have to find that bridge to be able to teach people and help them come into our world.
Nice. We end the podcast the same way every time with a question from the random question generator. You ready?
Oh yeah.
Okay. What was your favorite toy growing up? And you can't say poker chips.
I was about to say the deck of Uno cards.
Did you have anything non card related growing up? A favorite
Yeah.
video
Well,
game or
all right. Well, let's. So we glossed the childhood a touch. Well, I'll put it this way,
nice?
to let you know where I came from. Probably favorite toy coming up was a Molotov cocktail.
What? You mean
Oh
like
yeah.
was that Fisher Price or Mattel?
No, we were literally like I grew up with three of boys in the house, and all of our
hmm
friends were guys, and there was a little bit of wood up the hill from us, and there was no houses back there. And there was this giant stretch of woods, and the middle was like this house had burned down, and all this left was the basement. So it's just this giant concrete imprint, probably 8 12 foot walls. And so we literally would just go up there and be kids and burn things down and build Molotov cocktails and throw them against the wall and watch them explode. Like we were complete hooligans by today's standards. And if we had not run from the fire department and the cops on several occasions, we would not be having this conversation right now.
I'm sorry, but the statute of limitations for this is not up,
Oh no.
and you can expect a knock on your door shortly.
It was my brothers, I swear.
Well, they definitely influenced you. I mean, you could argue you were a victim of circumstance.
I was a
Um,
minor, Julio.
All right, Nathan, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing the stories.
Man, I've been looking forward to this for such a long time. I appreciate you having me, Julio. I do.
There you have it. That's the show. Thank you once again to Nathan for coming on. Believe it or not, the guy has a lot more stories to tell. One of the craziest stories about Nathan is that he was once kidnapped. I know, right? You can actually read all about that harrowing experience in a series of articles that Nathan has written for Card Player magazine. Just go to cardplayer.com and search his name and click on his author page. You can also follow him on Twitter at surfbum4life. Wow, he surfs too. And of course, you can catch Nathan commentating on the ongoing Galfond challenge by checking out his Twitch channel, also at surfbum4life. Follow us on Twitter at cardplayermedia or at poker_stories. And as always, leave us a nice rating and a review to earn yourself a free digital subscription to Card Player magazine. Let us know you did so with an email to pokerstories@cardplayer.com, and we'll make sure you get hooked up. Thanks for listening.